Hello everyone, Juliana here. I'm the founder of Jmamoni Lifestyle Etiquette Institute, and today I will be starting with my new series called Lifestyle Etiquette Unravelled. It's a virtual fireside chat series with global experts and opinion leaders coming from all corners of the world, sharing, inspiring, and educating everything lifestyle and etiquette related. The unique thing about this fireside chat is it's not only virtual, it should be in a relaxed environment with a cup of coffee or tea, and we will be unraveling all the misconceptions of respective industries, but also talking about the perks and curiosities of the industry. I hope you like it.
So, today we have America's foremost etiquette expert. She's an international etiquette expert. She's best-selling author of the book, Poised for Success. She's an entrepreneur, and she's also founder of the Protocol School of Palm Beach. Welcome, Jacqueline Whitmore.
Thank you, Juliana. It's such a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. And for me, you are really my special guest. And I really wanted to win you for my first episode, and I'm very happy to have you here.
It's my pleasure.
Jacqueline, before we really dive into the world of etiquette, I would like you to give us a brief intro, because I know you've been in China, I know you've been in Singapore, I think, but there may be people, especially the younger generation, who do not know you or know what you do. And it's very important for me to let them know what you do, because this should be also educational. And for the Asia Pacific region, I would like you to give us a brief intro.
I would love to give you a brief intro, and I want to say welcome to all of the viewers, and I appreciate everyone who is tuning in and watching our interview. As you said, I am the founder of the Protocol School of Palm Beach. So what does that mean? I'm plain and simple an etiquette expert.
Correct.
So I started my company in 1998 after working in the hospitality industry for many years. I was in public relations and marketing for one of the premier hotels in the entire world called The Breakers. And that's where I took my first etiquette course. And that's how I fell in love with the world of etiquette. And in 1998, my position was eliminated. I was furloughed, and it was the best time I felt to start my own business.
That's so interesting. That's so interesting you mentioned that, because this is something I would like to dig deeper for, especially the fresh graduates who really think of going into the entrepreneurship path. And maybe you can really, I know you also contribute to the entrepreneur.com articles. So maybe you can really let them know your journey to this entrepreneurship, being then an etiquette consultant.
Well, back when I started my business, entrepreneurship wasn't really as popular as it is today. In fact, I started my company in my home, in my little attic, and I was quite embarrassed to tell you the truth that I was not working out of a big building somewhere, because back when I started my business, people were going out to work. They were going into offices.
Correct.
And the fact that I worked in my home was still a very new concept. And so I turned my attic into an office. I bought a fax machine, a printer, and a computer, and that's all I ever started with. I did not have a lot of capital to start my own business. And
Yes.
a lot of entrepreneurs think that they need to have a lot of capital.
Correct.
I didn't even have a marketing plan. That's how how naive I was.
Yes, yes. And
So,
so yes, as you mentioned, how naive you were. So today, could someone start like that? I mean, nowadays they don't need the fax and you know, the telephone and all the things you mentioned. What does it take to be an entrepreneur? Can anyone be an entrepreneur? Do
well,
we need, yeah,
I believe anyone can, but it is not easy. You first have to have the desire. But even if you have the desire, you have to have discipline, because
yes,
to work for yourself, it can be very difficult financially, and it can also be very difficult emotionally. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. So I went from working in a luxury hotel with 500 plus employees to working by myself every single day. And I missed that contact with people.
yes,
So at the time when I started the Protocol School of Palm Beach, the internet was still brand new.
yes,
So just a few of us in this industry had a website. So there wasn't this big network of etiquette experts that I could call upon.
yes,
I couldn't do a lot of research on the etiquette industry because it was still fairly new. So I had to talk to other entrepreneurs who started their business, and I had to do a lot of networking.
correct.
And when I say networking, I don't mean Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. Those platforms did not exist.
Yes,
I had to get out and join women's groups and chambers and Rotary clubs and any group that I could think of just to get my name out, but also to be among people. And entrepreneurship is a very lonely life
correct.
at first.
Yeah.
And I didn't start out with any employees, even to this day. And I've been doing this since 1998. I don't have any employees. Now, I do hire people to do certain things
Yes.
for me, but I still work from home and I don't have a staff. And so that is the other hard part of entrepreneurship. If you don't like to do the accounting and the marketing, you either have to learn like I did, or you have to hire someone, and that can be very expensive, at least when you're starting out. So when I left the Breakers, I had my severance package, and that was it. So it was more difficult for me at the time to try to drum up business.
Yes.
Because I didn't have any contacts, and I couldn't go on the internet and just post something on Facebook.
Right.
So I did something that I don't really recommend to a lot of people. I put together a public seminar, and those public seminars are very difficult to organize, but I went to a local hotel in my area, and I rented a room, and I rented some audio visual, and I wrote a press release, and I promoted a half-day dining etiquette program. And I sent this press release to the newspapers in my area. And because I had the marketing background, I was able to write an enticing press release, enough so where 4 newspapers in my area in South Florida covered this program. They wrote about my business.
Amazing. Amazing. And that probably gave you the last push from, doing the groundwork, every single groundwork to come out there.
Well, it was a good head start, but then after a couple of programs, then I had to think of other ways of promoting my business. I had to think of other ways of making money, because in this business and many businesses, you have to have different arms of income. So it's not enough just to teach seminars in etiquette. That alone will not pay the bills. And I'm very honest when people call me and they tell me they want to start an etiquette business.
Yes.
And they'll ask me, how much can I make teaching etiquette?
Yes.
And my answer is always the same. How much do you want to work? Because I remember the first 3 to 5 years, I was working morning, noon, and night, weekends, holidays. And literally, I made myself sick the first 3 years because I was working so much and I didn't have that balance. But I will also say this, the first 3 years, at least in this business, I feel, it's very difficult to make a profit the first 3 years. You're very lucky to make a profit the first 5 years. If you can break even the first 5 years, because what people don't realize, in order to be successful in this business, you have to have proper training. And with any business, whether you're selling real estate or you're opening up a restaurant or an etiquette business, you have to have the proper training. And if you don't have those credentials, even though your clients probably will never ask you, where did you go to school? They won't ask you that, but it gives a person a sense of confidence whenever you are educated in your field. And so I always tell my students, school is never out. Learners are earners.
Correct. That was a very great insight in entrepreneurship. And I hope for you out there, especially the young graduates, that was actually a lesson in entrepreneurship. Well, Jacqueline, let's go to the next, which is actually the topic of this whole series, namely unraveling industry's misconceptions. To unravel the misconception of what etiquette is, I would like to ask you, as an etiquette consultant, when you introduce yourself, what is the reaction of the people? What do they think you do?
Well, I can answer that in various ways. It depends on who asks, and it depends on how I answer. For example, a woman just yesterday asked me, what do I do? She's actually staying next door at an Airbnb. And I said, well, I'm an etiquette consultant. And immediately, instead of waiting for her to ask me the next question, I volunteer the definition of that. And oftentimes I'll say, well, I help young people transition from backpack to boardroom. I teach people soft skills or people skills.
Yes.
I teach everything from how to use a knife and fork to how to dress for an interview. People understand that.
Yes.
And so I put it in a way where it's understandable for people. Whereas if someone asked you, what is an etiquette consultant, you might have a completely different answer. But for me, I try to put it in a way where they immediately get it. If I say, well, I help young people, even though I've worked with people of all ages, but when you say, I teach young people soft skills, how to transition from one phase of their life to the next, people understand that.
And I love that, because that's exactly what I preach and also do. Soft skills, people skills. You've given exactly the words that are so important for me, and important every day, was and is still today. And I remember you mentioned that. I would like to come back to your book. You said, soft skills are today's hard skills. And there are people hopefully realizing that now. And etiquette is literally advanced soft skills. It has so many attributes of soft skills, and it's beautiful that you put it that way. That's great. I would like to dig deeper. So just to have a glimpse in a day of a life of an etiquette consultant, Because there are people who think it's glamorous. We have, you know, all the, I don't know, big names and celebrities or whoever we are talking to and surrounded by. Please give us a little glimpse of a day in the life of an etiquette consultant.
Well, my life could be completely different from someone who's teaching etiquette in New York City or Chicago or even in Iowa or Singapore or China. My life is very simple. I try to keep my life stress-free and simple.
Yes.
My life as an etiquette consultant has also changed over the years. When I first started my business, I was a lot younger. So I was traveling a lot more than I am now. For example, everything we do now almost is virtual.
Correct.
When I was starting my business, I was gone a lot. I was on airplanes a lot. I believe that I experienced the etiquette business in its heyday when it was very glamorous, when companies had a lot of money and they brought people like me in to teach for a half day or full day, and they had big budgets back then. Big budgets, and would put me up in nice hotels, and we would do full dining seminars with all the beautiful silverware and the cutlery, all of that.
Well, that's no more today.
That's no more. And I'm so grateful that I got to experience that. But now things are different.
Yes.
People are working with limited budgets. People are working virtually. I don't know if people really value etiquette as much as I do. When you say the word etiquette, oftentimes it conjures up different, I don't know, it's stuffiness or pretentiousness.
Yes,
And etiquette
exactly.
is not, and etiquette is not that. In fact, etiquette is just the opposite of that. But I have had clients tell me, let's not call it an etiquette seminar because of that word. So we have to come up with a different word.
It's true. And I'm still searching for that word. It's true. I had a workshop and I called it business etiquette. And I remember people were going up and down and thinking, what's this title? Is it just about, you know, as you said, stiffiness or being pretentious, or I don't know what they thought it should be. But because of the word, people just thought, oh, that's nothing for me. Until I had a one-to-one talk, you know, on the veranda explaining what are the essentials. And I think you are really the epitome of business etiquette consultant. You brought it in your book, and I would like to come back to your book, Poised for Success. It was #1 in China, right? If I'm,
yes.
And it's still, you wrote this book when, 10 years ago?
Yes, in 2007. It was a long time ago.
It was a long time. And I think you are such a natural writer. And I love reading your books, because when reading what you are, you know, writing, I feel I'm conversing with you. You're really talking to the people. And you brought it to the point what etiquette, and especially in a professional environment, means. And you also said this can make and break a deal and building relationships. It's more than just this pretentiousness. And I love that you mentioned that. I would like to you've mentioned also how it was, you know, in your day in the life of an etiquette consultant. It looks different from your perspective living in Florida. It will be different in New York. It will be different in Singapore. That leads to my next question, which is so important to me. And I would love to use this platform to promote it. I would like to promote the global cultural awareness. And etiquette, as you said, it's more than just some stiffy or stuffy rules. We know there are general rules people should know, but etiquette is so broad that there is no one size fits all. And coming from Florida, there may be some etiquette tips that are completely different than coming from the West Coast or from the East Coast. We have the same in Asia. It will be completely different what the rules are in China to Japan or Korea. So now, can you please mention for those who would like to travel to US and be prepared and be professional, what are the general main do's and don'ts in US?
Well, first of all, let me say the U.S. is, contrary to what's going on in the media today, the U.S. is a very friendly place. It really is. Americans in general are extremely friendly. Have you been to the U.S.?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so you
more
know.
than West Coast, yes.
If you get off of a plane and you look like you don't know where you're going, an American will actually stop and say, "Do you need help?"
Correct.
I mean, that's just how most of us are. So when you come from another country, you may not be accustomed to that level of friendliness. When you get into a cab or Uber, the cab driver wants to have a full conversation with you, especially if you're from another country. They ask you questions about where you're from. They ask you sometimes personal questions that you might not be comfortable asking. In the US, we're very comfortable asking people, "Are you married? Do you have children?"
Yes.
That is not an acceptable question to ask everybody. Or our first question we're going to ask is, "What do you do?"
What do you do?
We're curious. We want to know what line of work you're in. It's not, and oftentimes we'll say, "How are you?" We don't really mean, "How are you?" We really, I don't want to sound blunt, but we really just, that's a phrase that we use.
That's
How
a
are you?
phrase. Yeah, how are you? That's a phrase indeed. That's a good example. Typical for US and in Germany, for example, if we say, "How are you?" we really mean, "How are you really? I want to know how you are." And it's completely different in the US. If someone says, "How are you?" please don't tell me your whole life story, isn't it? Yeah, that's really great. Yeah.
Yes. So I think people from other countries have to get used to our level of friendliness here. But having said that, if you're doing business in the US, we can be very blunt, almost to the point where it's borderline rude, because we oftentimes say what we think without, and this is poor etiquette, without thinking about how this person feels. We'll say what's on the top of our mind without thinking it through. We're not comfortable with silence. We like to talk all the time. We're great talkers and poor listeners. So Americans are not comfortable with silence. So for an American to stop and listen for any extended period of time, it's quite unusual. So in my etiquette courses, I teach people the art of listening, because when you are not talking, you can listen for clues of what this person is really saying. So, I mean, I could go on and tell you more about Americans, but I think that's the main point that I want to get across, is that Americans, for the most part, are very friendly.
A beautiful tip. Thank you so much. That was very clear. And now, to just, explore more and let people understand, there are also the finesse where I say, "Oh, these are things you actually know once you're in the country." So the general rules of etiquette you should know for US. What are now the nuances depending on which state you are visiting? Can you give us like 2 examples what someone from the South, for example, will, accept or not, and someone from the West Coast? So like 4 or less etiquette tips that are really more, related to certain areas in the US. In order for people to understand, yes, you can Google the general rules. You should do your research before traveling. but there are also some fine nuances you should know from each region.
Well, the US is a very big place. And unlike Europe, for example, if you live in Italy, you can just drive an hour or two and you can be in a completely different country. So you get a sense of the culture and appreciation for other cultures. The US is so large that there are many people in our country that haven't even explored areas outside of the US. Many people here don't even own a passport because for me to, I live in Florida, and for me to fly to the West Coast, California, for example, it would take at least 4 hours for me to get there. And it can be very expensive flying from East Coast to West Coast. So the financial aspect is one reason that people don't go outside of their own territory. And also, I think that we have so many different cultures here in our own country that I think too, Americans can be very lazy. We're also hardworking, but there's also a certain percentage that are very lazy that don't want to learn about other cultures. So back to your original question. We've got West Coast and East Coast, North and South.
Yes.
I live in the South, so I grew up in the South. So when I said friendly, we're very friendly. We will invite you to our homes. We'll cook you dinner. We will have you over for a glass of iced tea.
Yes.
That's how we show our hospitality. If you go up north, northeast, New Jersey, Massachusetts, New York, Vermont, those areas, Connecticut, they're going to be, their level of hospitality might be, well, we'll just meet you out for dinner.
Yes.
They wouldn't necessarily invite you into their homes unless they know you very well. And I'm just speaking generally. So there are exceptions to every rule.
Yes, correct.
Also, people in the Northeast are a little bit more formal in terms of their business style and their dress. People on the West Coast in California and Seattle and Portland, they're more casual in dress, especially in California, where there are a lot of tech companies. So people
Correct.
don't dress up for work.
Yes.
And so when I go to the West Coast, I have to think about a completely different wardrobe because it's much more relaxed.
Correct.
If I go to New York, I'm going to get out my blue suit, my dark clothes. If I stay in the South, I'm going to pack my lighter clothes.
Yes. Wonderful, wonderful, Jacqueline. And I think you made it so clear to show again first, the general etiquette rules and then the finesse of, regions or states. Wonderful, wonderful.
And every state has their own level of hospitality and their own, for example, if you go to Texas, that you might be taken to a rodeo.
Oh, yes.
That would be fun. You might get in a big pickup truck and then the host would take you to a rodeo and you would love that. Whereas if you come to Florida, we would probably take you to a theme park because that's what people like to do. I mean, if you live here, you don't always do that, but that's where we like to take our tourists. So every state has its own personality and its own cuisine. For example,
exactly.
If you go to Maine, you're going to eat a lobster roll. If you come to Florida, you might eat a key lime pie. If you go to Texas, you might eat Mexican food. So,
yeah. Beautiful. Wonderful. Really beautifully displayed. I'm coming now to my next question. And this is something I think everyone would probably relate to when you give us a bit of your reflection. It has been a really difficult year, and it's still for many of us. And especially in the consultancy, where the human interaction, the direct human interaction is so important for our profession. I found it challenging to bring that across a screen. and you have to be adaptable, and that was crucial. I would like to know your reflection of how 2020 was for you personally, but also professionally.
Well, we'll start out professionally because I think we can all relate in the industry of what it did to the speaking industry. The speaking industry was hit very hard. And as an etiquette consultant, that's where I have made a lot of my income, speaking to groups. That didn't happen anymore. So what I had to do was I had to pivot and take all of my programs virtually. So last year was my year to reinvent myself, and I started with my website. I built a brand new website from scratch, even though I have had a website for years, and it's been a wonderful marketing tool.
And I love it.
Thank you. Well, did you see my new website?
I saw your new website, and I really love it. I feel it's very personal, approaching, modern, virtual.
That was my goal.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was my goal. I had all new pictures taken. I haven't had a new headshot taken in 11 years. I had videos taken. I hired someone who was someone completely different to start over with me.
Yes.
So I worked on that. I worked on branding. Why? Because I had the time.
Yes.
Now,
exactly.
I will say a lot of people are afraid of spending money when the money isn't coming in as regularly.
Yes.
And I was cautioned about that. Financial advisor said, you shouldn't build a new website this year. And I decided, if I'm not going to do it this year, when am I going to do it? I've got the time.
Correct.
And I will tell you, a new website from scratch takes a lot of time. It took me 6 months to build that website. And I didn't do it myself. I had the ideas. I had someone else do it. But when am I going to have a concentrated amount of time where my phone isn't ringing and I don't need to get on an airplane and I have really no pressing obligations? So I took the time, that space, and instead of feeling sorry for myself, I decided I would occupy my time with creativity.
That's a beautiful tip. That's a beautiful tip. Instead of feeling sorry for myself, I act. I just don't sit. I act. Proactive.
Right. And when you work by yourself all day, every day, it can get a little depressing, and it can wear on you mentally. If you don't keep your mind active. And you can only walk outside just so much, and then you have to come back outside. I can only clean my house so much and cook soup so much, and then I have to find something else to do. So I decided to tackle a very, very big project, and that was my project last year. Now this year, moving forward, I feel like I will be busier than last year, I hope.
Yes.
I'm remaining positive, and that's the key. You have to stay positive, even though, yes, I do get down. I do feel discouraged. I do feel sad. I feel all those things that people feel. I mean, how can you not when there's a pandemic not only affecting me, but affecting the entire world? But I will also say this, for the first time in history, we were all basically at the same place at the same time. I knew that I could pick up my phone and call anybody, and I knew exactly where they were. They were at home.
Yeah. Beautifully said. I'm happy you mentioned also the lows, and that there are not only highs, and the people out there, especially the younger generation, especially those who graduated last year and not knowing, where will I get a job? Will I get a job? And, some panicking and thinking of their future, their existence. It's nice having you here and mentioning really very clearly the highs and lows, and that it's normal, and I hope they can relate to that. I'm very grateful you mentioned that.
Well, thank you. And I don't feel like anyone felt extremely happy last year, because how can you when the world is in such turmoil? But what I did do was I made a lot of phone calls the first 3 months. I talked to a lot of friends who I had not spoken to in many, many months, even years. So I tried to make the best of the situation. And I'm a pretty positive person,
Yes.
For the most part, but I also felt that if I didn't keep my mind active, that I would just spiral downward. And so I took that opportunity to take classes online. Thank goodness.
Wonderful. I did it too.
I mean, I don't have to go to a local yoga studio. I can take a yoga class just about anywhere, as long as it's virtual. So I took advantage of that aspect. And I tell you what, I set up a new office. I bought new blinds for my office. I bought a new webcam. I bought a new microphone, which I'm wearing. I just felt like, oh, this is a great time to learn.
Yes, psychologists say taking online classes makes us happy. And there is a truth in, you pick up a new course or a completely different industry, completely different topic than you are used to. And it just, it elevates your whole mood and gives you hope and courage. And there is a truth in. I did the same. I took 2 online classes. I took courses from universities. Wonderful. I just thought, as you said, okay, we can't do the face-to-face, courses and the speaking engagements, but it can't be that we just stand still and not move. So I'll need to do something. And if it's taking webinars or online courses, that's also a move forward, isn't it, than being paralyzed.
Absolutely. I think it's important to keep learning.
Beautiful. That's a very good transition. What did you learn in this time about yourself? Because at once we had so much time and we had to deal with ourselves. What did you learn about yourself, observing you, and what matters at the end of the day in life?
Well, that's a good question. What did I learn about myself? Well, I learned, I guess I've always known this about myself, but it was magnified during the pandemic. You've heard of the saying, you either go into fight or flight mode.
Correct.
I am a real fighter. And so I felt determined to accomplish certain things. We had the opportunity to apply for something called the Payroll Protection Program here in the US. I also taught my friends how to apply for it as well. So I like to share what I learn with other people, and I also like to help other people succeed. And I felt like that was magnified last year, that once I learned how to do something, I wanted to teach it to other people so that they would feel comfortable. My girlfriend's an image consultant, very well known in the image industry. Susan Bigsby is her name. She and I collaborated, and we put together the very first virtual presence seminar. No one in our industry had done that.
You help people.
Time.
Yes, you love helping people, which is a beautiful trait, and I wish we would have a lot of that in today's world.
Well, thank you. And I guess to answer your question, that was magnified. I do love to help people. And when people come and train with me, they're so surprised how open and honest I am. And people will say, well, you're training your competition. And I don't feel that way at all, because I believe that what you give out will come back to you. And what you reap is what you sow, in other words. And there's enough business for everybody.
This is exactly how I see you, Jacqueline. And I feel one can feel it when reading your books. This is exactly what I thought of you. And I'm glad having you now today here on the virtual stage, you just confirm it. It's
well, thank you. Thank you. Another thing that I did last year was I started an Ask the Expert series on Facebook. So I have a Facebook page, and I started doing these Facebook Live videos, which I've been wanting to do video for many, many years. I'm a broadcasting major.
Yes.
That's what I went to school for.
Yes.
But I've never had the time to actually do videos. So I called up some of my etiquette friends and I said, may I interview you for 20 minutes about such and such, about your new book? I hear you have a new book out, and I know you can't go on book tours. So may I introduce you to my audience? Oh, really? You want to do that? Of course I want to do that. Why wouldn't I want to do that? It helps me. It helps you.
Exactly. Exactly.
So that's what I did.
That's beautiful. It's a beautiful trait. Keep that. Keep that. So what's next for Jacqueline Whitmore? What's on the horizon for you?
Well, I guess if you had asked me that 2 years ago, I would have never told you I would be doing videos like this. So I don't even predict anything anymore. But I will tell you that I would like to write again.
I would love that.
Yes, I would like to write again, but I've already written 2 etiquette books. And
I know, and I have them.
Well, thank you. I'd love to sign it for you one day.
I would love to.
And
you are a natural writer. You should really write the next book. Really.
Well, thank you. And to be very honest with you, and it's going to surprise a lot of etiquette consultants, but I don't even know if people really want to know how to hold a teacup. I really don't know if that's what I want to write about. I have written about etiquette, and I feel
beyond. You write beyond etiquette. Really, people have to read your book to understand what you actually tackle. And as you mentioned at the beginning, that's beyond etiquette. That's really life skills no one should miss. And your book, and even if you write a new edition, Jacqueline, I think that would be great.
Well, maybe I should do a poll and ask people what they're interested in, because I don't think they're interested in learning how to hold a teacup. Maybe they are.
But you write more than that. You write more than that. And
I think that I am at a different point in my life where there are other things that mean more to me. Not that etiquette doesn't. Etiquette's very important. Soft skills, people skills, they're all important. But like you said, there's a different level of that I'm interested in. And it's the relationship building.
Yes.
That's what it really is. It's how to, and also how to live more peacefully, more elegantly, because I did not grow up in a wealthy family.
Yeah.
I am not wealthy now. I mean, I have a very comfortable home, but I have made the best of my situation, my circumstances, and I think you can take wherever you live. And it doesn't matter if you live in a big home or a small home, you can take what you have and still make it comfortable and elegant and stress-free as much as you possibly can. And those things appeal to me, living a more elegant life, I suppose.
Yes. I think, you started already in your book, Poised for Success. That's what I meant with going beyond etiquette. You mentioned like relationships. You've started actually already that in that book. I found you were really, it was more than just, as you said, how to hold a teacup or fork and knife. It's relationships, and that's something that will always stay, whether in your private life, your neighbor, or in profession. And you should really continue that journey, and you would be a wonderful mentor also for the younger generation. I think that's, I would say, and I see that also as your natural gift, and you should maybe consider and go out, and who knows, when we can travel again. I think you should be really traveling the world, helping, the next generation, mentoring, more in the mentorship position. And you are just perfect for that. And that's very inspiring, powerful stories, and you should bring that out there. That's what I would say. This is how I see you. You can consider.
Well, I certainly will. And I think that too, what's important to me is helping young women.
Yes.
Helping young women succeed.
Yes.
And I certainly don't have a crystal ball to tell people how to do everything, but I do know that I've done a lot in my life. And if people can learn from my experiences and my stories,
Yes.
and that's what I really love to write about, is the story. Yes. And I think that's what people relate to, not rules and do's and don'ts. They relate to stories.
Yes. Yes. And that's what I loved about you when I read the book Poised for Success. I read also Business Class, but Poised for Success, I thought that was a book that was beyond etiquette.
I agree. It was beyond etiquette. And so there's another book somewhere. And I think this would be the year to start an outline and to start. I mean, I may just call you and say, well, what do you think of this? What do you think of this idea?
Well, I can't wait for that. I hope it will one day come. So I have prepared 3 fun questions that we use to fill our leaderboard. Of course, you are my first guest, so you'll be leading probably the leaderboard. Let's start with the first question. So that's more industry related. The world was my oyster, but I used the wrong fork. From whom is that?
That's Oscar Wilde.
Of course.
That is a quote that I used in my very first press release that I sent out in, I think it was probably September of 1998. And I started my press release, "The world is my oyster." And then I used the wrong fork, said Oscar Wilde. And then I talked about the importance of people learning proper dining skills in business situations. And then I went on to say that I was going to be conducting this dining seminar for the public. So that's
of course
that I know that quote very well.
Very good, wonderful. I didn't expect anything better than but of course every etiquette consultant should actually know this quote. And my second question is more of a trivia question. Which continent is the only one to not have ants?
Ants. Oh my goodness, you're going to stump me on that. We have a lot of ants over here, I can tell you that. And I would imagine Australia has ants. I mean, who doesn't have ants? I'm going to just guess.
A continent.
A continent. I don't know. You'll have to tell me.
Antarctica.
Oh.
Exactly. That's how I reacted as well.
That's funny. Yes, but it has the word ant in it.
Exactly. Exactly. And the last question. Within 5 seconds, name as many head of states as possible.
Heads of states? Oh my gosh. You've got me on that. I was terrible in history. 3, 2, 1. I know that's just for fun. Whoa, you're still leading the leaderboard. Oh, well, okay. I won't be there at the top forever, I can tell you that.
Jacqueline, we are coming to an end. And this whole, Etiquette Unraveled and this fireside chat should be in a comfortable, relaxed environment with a cup of coffee and tea. So this special feature is that what will be leading me to my last question. What is your go-to coffee order?
Oh, well, I love a cappuccino. And
Cappuccino.
I guess if I said if I'm going out to a restaurant, I love cappuccino. However, this interview is being conducted morning time for you, nighttime for me. So I'm having not coffee.
Cheers, exactly. But
Cheers.
cappuccino, according to a barista, your coffee order reveals a lot about your personality. Shall we check what this barista thinks about cappuccino? So I would think of them as someone fancy or someone looking for something a little sweeter than a latte. That's the perfect afternoon drink. Someone fancy. Wonderful. Jacqueline. It's you.
Why they say fancy? I think I'm a pretty simple person.
Beautiful.
Cappuccino isn't necessarily ordered by everyone.
Correct. Exactly. That's what the barista says. So if someone says cappuccino, oh, that's special. Beautiful, Jacqueline. Thank you so much for accepting the invitation. I really, really appreciate that. I'm very glad to see you, at least on a virtual way. And I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed it. And hopefully, who knows, maybe I may welcome you one day here in Singapore.
I would love to come to Singapore. I've only been there once, so I look forward to my next visit there.
Yes, please do so. Thank you so much, Jacqueline. And be well, be safe.
You too, and be safe.
Thank you. Thank you for being part of this series. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
For you out there, I hope you enjoyed the content and it was inspiring for you. And if you could take one thing with you, that would be already a success. We all need a direction and inspirations to come wherever we want to go to. And I hope you stay with me because we have an incredible lineup of some big names coming. And please subscribe my YouTube channel in order not to miss out, and follow and like my socials. And I hope really to see you again. Stay safe, stay tuned.